when we were setting up the business that I went into that I can't talk about, back in the 90s, we did what was called securitized lending, which is like where the subprime market came from. And not to bore you, but essentially this is where I sort of back then even thought, how did we do that? So how securitized lending works is that we create a bond. Okay, so we might picture a bond as a warehouse, and we might say we're going to make a $300 million warehouse here, and we'll fill that warehouse up with mortgages. So all the little guys run out and get the people to sign up these big, thick documents. A mortgage used to be 6 pages. It's now like this. Sign up their mortgages, and we'd fill this warehouse full of mortgages, and they're all pretty squeaky clean. And then we go and sell that bond on the bond market. And historically, a superannuation company or a large investment firm would buy the bond. And I thought at the time, chronologically, how did we do that? How did we get the money to give these people to buy their homes and then go and sell it on the bond market? And the big fella told me, welcome to the magic of banking. So you literally, and hopefully you saw through there, that, and let me ask you this, if at the end of World War II the population of the planet was roughly 2 billion, and just 70 years later it's roughly 7 billion, and there's all those extra rooftops out there, and all those extra rooftops are roughly 14 times as expensive as they were at the end of World War II, where'd all the money come from? I'm still amazed when I talk to people, I say, so you got a mortgage, yep. Where do you think the money came from to give you the dollars for the mortgage? Oh, from deposits. The tooth fairy must still come to that person's house. I mean, really, I think there's enough old people that pull the money out from under the mattress to provide all that those digits. Where did the digits come from? So it's really important you guys understand that it's all been manufactured, and who manufactured it? These private entities through the central banks and the banks themselves. What a business. And now we're all in this servitude and debt, trying to, like he said, the millions of slave wages, wage slaves, trying to keep up with their payments. So look, in terms of research, if you haven't got one, just ask Steph to email it to you, or there might be a couple here. We've got a recommended reads and watches. And in terms of the banking system, Money Masters. Who's heard of Money Masters? That would probably be one of the best. It goes for about 3.5 hours, I think. Money is Debt, Part 1 and Part 2. Part 2 is brilliant. Money as Debt, Part 2 really explains how all the banks operate as one. And because essentially, if you think about it, it really does run through an example of somebody buying a car, getting the cheque from someone else. Where did the money come from that bank to go to this bank? All the bank balances pretty much stay the same between the banks. It's just a slight configuration because the money just goes from one bank to the other, and they create it all together. And we've got examples of the banks in collusion with our clients. So fiscal manipulation is the total and premeditated abuse of the money system, and it is an abuse of the money system. But without us being victims, we're all still doing it. We're all still buying into it, so we're just feeding the machine that they've built. Okay? So what we'll do now is we'll go through how to handle debt honourably. Has anybody got some debt they want to learn how to handle honourably? Great. Firstly though, I just want to ask you one question. That's where I saw you, was at Swingers Party, it was. There he is. Isn't he beautiful? Jock. He's run away actually, he didn't even leave a note. The point that I'm making here is, be careful what you say. Okay, so the first thing that we teach our clients who are going to handle debt honourably is you don't speak to the other side because they're wordsmiths. All right, you don't know what the meaning of a lot of the words is, and even the people who run the call centres have been given carefully worded scripts to contract you, and the whole law system is based on contract. They will want to contract you. Okay, so what about this? What is your name?
Full colon, Jeanette.
But if I asked you before today, what would you say? Yeah, because you actually just made a statement. I just told you your name was what? Didn't I? So do you see what I'm saying? You've got to be careful. How do you know what you're actually answering or what you're talking about? Okay, what's the real answer here? What's 2 plus 2 is 4? Well, how do you know I didn't mean that? Or that? Or that? What's 4 plus 4? How do you know I didn't mean that? Have I made my point? So unless you're super, super clever and you want to get into some convoluted conversations with the wordsmiths, do it in writing. Okay? Because the English language can mean so many things so that nobody gets confused. Liars figure, but figures don't lie, so say nothing. As it's written, so shall it be done. So what we do with clients who are going to embark upon the debt process is teach them, do not speak to them. So when they call, we send you through a script, and what a lot of our clients do is just print it out in small font and get it laminated and stick it in their top pocket or have it in their wallet. And if you're in a meeting or whatever, just excuse yourself when your phone rings and go and read it out. And it goes something like this. They'll perhaps call you and say, hello, is Mark there? I'll firstly, never acknowledge that it's yourself. I would just say, may I ask who's calling? And they might say, oh, it's Jenny from Citibank. We just need to identify you, because they want to identify your date of birth and all that sort of stuff. And so the answer that I used and what most of our clients use now is, look, that person can't come to the phone. How can the person come to the phone? However, you're invited to send any and all correspondence in writing and in writing only to PO Box 733 Currumbin, whatever your address is. I don't consent to this phone call being recorded, nor do I consent to any other phone calls whatsoever, howsoever. And if you do, I'll be pursuing you under the Trade Practices Act for harassment. Thank you and goodbye. Okay? Now, that'll probably be, you'll probably have a little call centre person from India, you know, who's going to go, oh my goodness, what was that? And they'll run it up to their boss and their boss will know, because they're hearing this sort of stuff pretty regularly now, words out. If they call back, I would read it again, word for word. Don't let them talk over you, just read it out and say thank you, have a good day. Don't mean any malice to these people on the other side, they don't know. They're in a call centre just doing their job. Then you can start having fun with them. A lot of our clients, in our letters, we notice them that if they breach the Trade Practices Act, we'll be feeling harassed and traumatised. We'll be starting to invoice them for $10,000. So some of our clients are now sending invoices for $10,000 every time they call. So they thank them for the call. Or you can do things like they'll say, excuse me, Mr. Darwin, we need to verify your details. And you can say, no problem, you go first. Oh, so we can't do that. Well, you rang me. So you tell me your home address and date of birth and where you were born and everything else, and then I'll disclose mine to you. They'll hang up every time. Okay? So the irony of all this really for us in Truthology is I was a bankster, and one of Steph's first job was as a debt collector. So she's been trained on ringing people up and befriending them and contracting them into repayments, etc. So before we get started, essentially a contract must have three main factors, which are an offer, consideration and acceptance. Okay, so I might say to you, look, that 5 acres you've got down the bottom there, I'll turn up with my tractor and my slasher and my time and I'll slash it all for you. And that's my consideration. In consideration, would you be prepared to give me 3 sheep? Okay. Okay, but you see the point, or a car, whatever it is, your second born. So, a spare set of speakers, thanks, man. So I've made an offer. I've got true consideration, and your true consideration in return is the 3 sheep. So we've got some consideration from both sides, don't we? Yeah? So if the banks come to you with an offer, and their consideration is for money, okay, but they haven't fully disclosed how they got the money, have they been transparent in their arrangement with us? Do they have true consideration? If I get a printing press, and it's a pretty good printing press down in the basement, and I start printing money out, what's that called? And what does that do to the value of everyone else's money? Debases it. How's it any different to what they do? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to ask them a lot of questions based around their consideration, also based around the contract and so forth, and I'll run through a couple of those with you now.